Cats disappeared from the world. If cats disappeared from the world, how would the world change? And how would my life change? And if I disappeared from the world, well, I suppose nothing would change at all. Things would probably just go on, day after day, same as usual. Okay, so you're probably thinking, this is all a bit crazy. But please believe me. What I'm about to tell you happened over the past week. The most bizarre 7 days of my life. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention, I'm going to die soon. So how did all this happen? Let me begin at the beginning. This letter explains everything. It will probably be a long one, but please bear with me until the end. This is going to be my first and my last letter to you. It is also my will and testament. The book is so light, so it's kind of like moving here and there. Monday. The devil makes his appearance. I couldn't think of 10 things I wanted to do before I died. I saw a movie once where the heroine is about to die. So she makes a list of 10 things she wants to do before she passes away. Ugh, what a load of crap. Maybe I shouldn't be so harsh. But seriously, what even goes on a list like that? A bunch of junk, probably. How would I know that? Okay, well, I don't really know. I tried writing that stupid list in, let me tell you, I'm embarrassed of the results. It all started 7 days ago. I had this cold that I just couldn't shake, but I kept going to work delivering mail every day despite it. I had a slight fever that was plaguing me and a pounding migraine on the right side of my head. Since I hate going to the doctor, I was just barely keeping myself together. With the help of some over-the-counter drugs. But after 2 weeks with no improvement, I finally caved in. That's when I found out it wasn't a cold. It was, in fact, a brain tumor, stage 4. The doctor told me I had only 6 months left to live. Tops. But I'd be lucky if I made it another week. Then he explained my options. Chemotherapy, anti-cancer drugs, palliative care. I had stopped listening. I was thinking about how when I was little, we used to go to the pool during our summer vacation. One time, I jumped into the cold blue water with a splash, and then sank slowly to the bottom. You have to warm up before you jump in, it was my mother's voice. But underwater, she sounded muffled. For some reason, this strange memory popped into my heart. Head. It was a moment I'd almost completely forgotten until now. I couldn't be in the examination room any longer. I decided to end the appointment. The doctor's words still hung in the air as I lurched out of the room, and I ran outside screaming and knocking into pedestrians around me, ignoring the doctor's pleas for me to stop. I stumbled and fell to the ground. When I picked myself back up again, I ran through the streets with my arms flailing around wildly until I reached the foot of a bridge and felt like I couldn't run any farther. Then, I sank to my knees with a little sob. Well, no, that's a lie. Maybe that's not exactly what happened. The fact of the matter is, in reality, people tend to be surprisingly calm when they hear news like this. When I found out my diagnosis, the first thought that popped into my head was that I was one stamp away from earning a free massage at the spa. And also, that I shouldn't have stocked up on so much toilet paper and laundry detergent during my last shopping trip. But it wasn't long until I was overcome by a bottomless sadness. I was only 30 years old. Okay, I know that means that I've lived longer than Hendrix and... Basquiat? But somehow I felt like I still had a lot of unfinished business. There must be something. I didn't know what, but something on this planet that only I was meant to accomplish. But I didn't really dwell on any of this. Instead, I wandered in a daze until I reached the train station, where I spotted a couple of young guys playing guitar and singing. This life will someday have to end, so until that day arrives, final day arrives, do what you want to do it, do all you can. That's how you face tomorrow. Idiots, I thought. Now that's what I call a complete lack of imagination. No wonder they're wasting their time singing and panhandling their lives away in front of this god-awful station. I was so angry. I couldn't bear to wait around for the train and listen to these two guys go on any longer. So, I decided to head home on foot and take my sweet time to get back to my apartment. Once I reached home, I clattered up the stairs and opened the cardboard-thin door to the cramped little space that I called home. It was then that the realization of the utter hopelessness of my situation finally caught up with me. The outlook was bad. I mean literally. For I couldn't see a thing all of a sudden. And then I fainted, right there on the doorstep. When I came to, I was still lying in the doorway. God knows how long I'd been there for. In front of me, I could make out the shape of a blurry, round, black and white ball with gray patches. The ball made a noise. Meow. That's when I realized it was a cat. But not just any cat, it was my cat. The one I've been living with for 4 years now. He came closer and let out another meow. I took this as a sign that he was worried about me. But since I wasn't dead yet, I righted myself and sat up. I still had a fever and my head continued to throb. Then reality hit me again and I realized this wasn't a dream. I really was sick. Then, out of nowhere, someone's voice bellowed from across the room. "Hello. So great to meet you." I looked up and there I was. I mean, it was me, standing there, looking at me. Although technically it couldn't be me because I was still sitting in the doorway to the apartment. Maybe it was someone who looked just like me, I thought. The word doppelganger sprang to mind. I had read something about this sort of thing in a book ages ago. There's another you who appears when you're about to die. Yes, though? Get out? Had I finally gone crazy? I wondered. Was my time already up? My head was starting to spin. I knew I had to tackle whatever it was that was standing before me head on. Who are you? Who do you think? The angel of death? Close? Close? I'm the devil. The devil? Yes, the devil. And that's how, in a surprisingly low-key kind of way, the devil appeared in my life. Have you ever seen him? Well, I have. And he's not what you'd expect. The real devil doesn't have a scary red face or a pointy tail. And there's no pitchfork in sight. The devil looks just like you. So I guess the real doppelganger is the devil. It was a shocking discovery, and a lot to process in the moment. Well, what could I do about it? Here was a devil in my apartment, and surprisingly enough, he seemed like a nice guy. So I decided not to freak out and to just go along with it. Upon closer inspection, I realized that although the devil looked exactly like me, we couldn't have been more different when it came to our sense of style. I always dress in basic black and white. I mostly wear black slacks with a plain white shirt and a black sweater. Boring, I know. But that's just who I am deep down. A monotone guy. I remember ages ago my mother once got fed up with my wardrobe choices. "There you go, buying the same thing over and over again," she'd complain. But to this day, I still find myself sticking to my comfort zone whenever I go shopping. The devil, on the other hand, dresses shall we say, unconventionally? brightly colored Hawaiian shirts and patterns of palm trees and classic American cars, board shorts, and a pair of Ray-Bans propped on top of his head, as if he were permanently on vacation, despite it being freezing outside. For the king of the underworld, clearly it was always summer. "So, what are you going to do now?" he inquired. "Huh? I mean, you haven't got a lot of time left. Got a lot of time left. You know, your life expectancy thing and all that." "Oh, that. Right. So, what are you going to do?" "Well, I thought maybe I'd start with coming up with a list of 10 things. Don't tell me you're going to copy that old movie cliche, are you?" "Yeah, sort of, I guess." "You would really do something that corny? You think that's a bad move?" "Well, I mean, sure, a lot of people do it and proclaim they'll check every last item off of their bucket list. You know, you know the kind, right? It's a phase that everyone goes through at least once. Although I guess it's not as if you get a second chance now, do you?" Holding his sides, the devil let out a huge guffaw at this last thought. "I don't really see what's so funny about this." Right, of course. Well, I guess you never know until you try, right? "Why don't we drop a quick list right now then?" he suggested. So, I got a sheet of blank paper and wrote at the top of the page, 10 things I want to do before I die. And then I paused. I started feeling even more depressed immediately. I'm going to die any day now, and here I am wasting my time writing up lists? You've got to be kidding. It was difficult at first to organize my thoughts, but somehow I managed to cobble a list together, despite the fact that the entire time I was working I had to avoid the devil, who was constantly trying to peek over my shoulder, and not to mention the fact that at one point I also had to forcibly remove the cat from my desk, because like all cats, he always thinks it's a good idea to sit on whatever you're trying to work on or read. So, after all that, here's the list I came up with. One, go skydiving. 2, climb Mount Everest. 3, speed along on the autobahn in a Ferrari. 4, indulge in a 3-day-long feast of gourmet Chinese food. 5, take a ride on a Transformer's back. 6, fly to Paris and fall in love. 7, go on a date with Princess Leia. 8, turn a corner just in time to bump into a beautiful woman who's carrying a cup of coffee. Then watch our passionate love affair unfold. 9, during a torrential rainstorm, run for shelter under the same awning as the girl I had a crush on in school. 10, I mentioned that I'd like to fall in love just once. What is this? The devil asked incredulously. Are you being serious? "Oh, well, yeah, no," I stammered. "Come on, you're not a schoolboy anymore. Frankly, I'm a little embarrassed for you." "Sorry, I'm so sorry." "Yeah, I know. I'm pathetic." I racked my brains and this was the best I could come up with. Even the cat looked disgusted with me. I could tell he was keeping his distance. There now," the devil patted me on the shoulder in an attempt to cheer me up. "Okay, tell you what. Why don't we see about taking that skydiving trip, huh? Just a quick visit to the ATM and then it's off to the airport we go." 2 hours later, I found myself on a jet plane 3 miles up in the air. "Okay, ready?" asked the devil, cheerful as ever. "Geronimo!" he hollered as he gave me a shove. And the next thing I knew, I was falling out of the plane. It was as I'd always dreamed it would be. The bright blue sky opened up, the clouds towered around me, and the Earth's horizon stretched on forever. I always thought that things would never look the same again after I'd seen the world from so high up. I'd suddenly stopped sweating the small stuff and realized that I need to grab life by the horns. But that's not how it went at all. Instead, I instantly regretted my decision. before I'd even jumped. I was cold and way high up there on the plane, and the whole thing was just terrifying. Why would someone go and jump out of a plane of their own free will? Was this what I really wanted? I pondered these things as I fell to earth, before a darkness consumed me once again. When I came to, this time, I was lying on my bed, back home in my tiny apartment. Again, it was a cat's meow that roused me. I struggled to sit upright with my head throbbing and feeling worse than ever. Do not make me do that again, I screamed. Aloha, I decided that the devil, decked as he was in his Hawaiian shirt, would henceforth be known as Aloha. Sitting on the edge of my bed, his brow creased with worry. My apologies for the inconvenience. Hey, I could have died out there. Well, okay, I realize I'm going to die anyway, but really? Aloha was splitting his sides. Unimpressed with his joke, I scooped the cat up and snuggled him against my chest for comfort. He was warm and soft, a smooth, fluffy ball of fur in my arms. I'd cuddle up with the little guy countless times over the years without thinking much about it, but now, for the first time ever, it occurred to me that maybe this little act of comfort was what life was all about. That's cute. The thing is, there's just not many things I want to do before I die, I admitted. Oh, really? At least, I don't think I could come up with 10. And the ones I can think of are all pretty boring, probably pretty boring. Well, I guess that's life, huh? I guess, I trailed off. Well, actually, I was wondering, could I ask you something? Who, me? Yeah, I was wondering, why did you come here? I mean, what are you doing here? Aloha let out an unsettling laugh, then asked deviously, do you really want to know? Well then, I'll tell you. Okay. Now, you're scaring me. The sudden change in Aloha's tone made me wince. I had a bad feeling about this. All my instincts were telling me that there was trouble up ahead. What's wrong? He asked. Did I really want to hear whatever he was about to say? I wondered. I took a deep breath to steel my nerves. That's okay. I'll be okay. I reassured myself. I'm just asking a question. Nothing wrong with asking a simple question. Nothing. That's fine, I said. I'd like to know. So go ahead. Shoot. Well, it turns out you're going to die tomorrow. What? Your time's up tomorrow. That's why I came here to tell you. I was stunned speechless. The initial shock was followed swiftly by a feeling of deep despair, and suddenly my entire body felt weak and my knees trembled. Hey, don't be so down, said Aloha in a cheerful tone. Look at me. I'm here to help. This is your way out. I've come to make you an offer. Way out? What do you mean? You don't want to die now, do you? In your sorry state? No. I want to live, if I can. Without missing a beat, Aloha went on. Well then, there is something we could do. Do? What do you mean? Well, you could call it kind of magic. I could, perhaps, prolong your lifespan. Really? But there's one condition. You must accept this one fundamental law of the universe, and that is, in order to gain something, you have to lose something. What does that mean exactly? Oh, nothing too complicated. It's just a matter of simple exchange. Exchange of what? All you have to do is remove one thing from the world, and in return, you will get one more day of life. You're kidding, that's all? I might have been desperate, but I hadn't completely lost my mind. I wonder what gave Aloha the right to make such an offer in the first place. Strange equivalent? Well, we'll see. Now you're probably wondering what gives me the right to do that. No. What makes you say that? Was he for real? Aloha have ESP? I wondered. Of course, I can read minds. Hello, I'm the devil, remember? Of course you can. Anyway, I don't want to rush you, but we don't have much time, so you're going to have to get on board quickly. Are you with me? A simple transaction is all I ask for. So says you. Anyway, I don't want to rush you. Wait. Okay then, since you don't believe me, let me tell you how this transaction came to be, he said, lying back and making himself comfortable next to me on the bed. You're familiar with the book of Genesis? You mean the Bible? Yes, I'm somewhat familiar with it. But I've never actually read it through it. Oh, that's too bad. This would have gone a lot faster if you had. Sorry. Whatever, it's fine. I'll just give you the highlights. First of all, God created the world in 7 days. Yeah, I've heard that part. Allah continued. On the first day, the world was covered in darkness, and God said, "Let there be light." And then there was day and night. On the second day, God created the heavens, and on the third day, He created the earth. Now that's what I call one hell of a creation. Next thing you know, the ocean swelled and plants took root. Pretty impressive, I agreed. You're telling me, Aloha continued. And then, on the fourth day, He created the sun, the moon, and the stars in the sky, and the universe was born. On the fifth day, fish and birds were created, and on the sixth day, He created animals, and made man in His own image. That's when you enter the picture. Yes, I remember it now. The creation of heaven and earth, the cosmos, and then humankind made an appearance. And on the seventh day, what happened? On the seventh day, He rested. Even God needs to take a break now and then. And that's Sunday, right? Exactly. Now isn't that incredible? He did all that in just 7 days. This dude is just awesome, you know? I have so much respect for him. I'm no expert, but it seemed to me that referring to God as a dude was a tad disrespectful. Aloha continued. The first man's name was Adam. But God thought he might be lonely since he was the only human around, so He created a woman, Eve, from Adam's rib. But then the two of them were just hanging out without much to do. So I decided to spice things up a bit. I suggested to God that I get them to eat the apple. Yeah, sleep away, Sofu. The apple? Right. See, the two of them were living in the Garden of Eden, which was a kind of paradise where they could do anything they wanted and eat anything they wanted. But that's not all. There was no such thing as aging or death. There was just one thing they weren't allowed to do: to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's where the apple comes in, the forbidden fruit. W book, oh, you're so sick. And I still stop that. I paid Adam and Eve a visit and suggested to them that they eat the apple. And you know what? They actually did it. Wow, you really are evil. Now, hold your applause. So, the two of them were driven out of paradise, which meant that humans would be fated to experience aging and death. And so began a long history of conflict and struggle. Man, that's diabolical. I appreciate your admiration, but it really wasn't that big of a deal. No, after all this went down, God sent His own Son, Jesus Christ, down to earth. But not even that could persuade human beings to take a cold hard look at themselves and repent. Then to top it off, the humans go and kill this Jesus dude. Oh yeah, I've heard about this part. After that, human beings just became more and more selfish. They started using all their time to make all sorts of new-fangled objects, you know? All those little doodads you're not sure you really need. They made more and more of them without any inclination of stopping. So, I made another suggestion, to God. I said to Him, look, how about I go down to earth and help those humans decide what they really need and what they don't? And then, I made a deal with God. I said, whenever those humans decide to get rid of something, as a reward, I'll extend their life for 1 day. I was given the power to do that, and ever since then, I've been doing a lot of hunting for prospective clients, people I can do business with. And that's how I came to you. I made deals with all kinds of people, and as a matter of fact, you're number 108. Number 108, huh? That's right. Not that many, eh? Only 108 people in the entire world accepted the deal. You're really lucky, By simply making one thing disappear from the earth, you can extend your life by 1 day. Isn't that great? It was such an unexpected and ridiculous offer. Aloha sounded like a used car salesman, desperate to sell you something. How could you possibly extend your life by making such a simple swap? Although, setting aside for a moment the question of whether I actually believed him, I wasn't exactly in a position to refuse. Either way, I was going to die. I didn't really have a choice. Oh god, just boomers, leave them alone. I started to think through the terms of the deal. Aloha said by making something disappear from the world, I could live for 1 more day. Let's see now. That would be 30 items a month, 365 per year. It would be simple. The world is basically drowning in crap anyways. All those small, silly, useless things, like the parsley they put on an omelet, or the promotional flyers they're always sticking on your windshield. Or how about those lengthy user manuals that come with your new fridge or washing machine? Or watermelon seeds. All kinds of unnecessary things spring to mind. If you really think about it, you could come with at least 1 or 2 million things the world could do without. If I'm supposed to live to 70, that would mean I have 40 more years left on the clock. So if I get rid of 14,600 items, I could die a natural death at the age of 70 after all. Aloha had a point. For thousands of years, humankind has done nothing but make useless things. So if something were to disappear, no one would notice. In fact, the world would be a simpler place. People would thank me for this. I mean, just take a look at what I do for a living. I'm a postman. Pretty soon, postmen will be extinct because no one writes letters or postcards anymore, or becoming obsolete. When you think about it, there must be all kinds of things cluttering up the world that are borderline unnecessary. Maybe the entire human race is unnecessary, and the world we live in has no meaning at all. Dude, to sacrifice the human race. We went to Lulu? So we'll go back to sleep. Okay, fine. I agreed to the exchange. Go ahead and make something disappear. I want to live longer. I accepted the terms. Once I'd made the decision to give up some of the things in my life, I suddenly felt a lot bolder. Oh wow, really? Aloha seemed bowed over by my decision. Great, now you're talking. So, what should I erase? I asked, looking around the apartment. Let's see. Okay, I haven't cracked my fingers in a hot minute. Sofu, what the heck? Let's see. First of all, how about we get rid of these stains on the wall? Aloha stared blankly at me and said nothing. Okay then. How about the dust on top of the bookshelves? Again, silence. I know. Let's get rid of that mold growing on the bathroom towels. Come on now. What do you think I am? The maid? Let's not forget this is the devil you're working with. Oh. Am I not thinking along the right lines? What did you expect? I'm the one who gets to decide. And how do you decide what to get rid of? How? Well, now that you ask, I suppose it's just a feeling. Or it depends on what mood I'm in. Ain't no way. Disappear all okay hard. I was gonna sacrifice ears. What the heck? Mood? So what's it gonna be? Aloha said as he surveyed the room. I followed his gaze, the whole time silently pleading, don't touch that figurine, and not those limited edition sneakers. I was being given my life in return for anything he might take. This is exactly what they mean when they talk about making a pact with the devil. It's not supposed to be easy. What if he chose something really big to make disappear? Like the sun, or the moon, or the ocean, or the earth itself? Would that be enough for him? Just as it was dawning on me what a big deal this really was, Aloha's stare settled on something sitting on a table. What's this? He asked, grabbing the small packet and shaking it. A rattling sound escaped from the box. Those are chocolate chip cookies, you know. Chips Ahoy. Chips? No, Chips Ahoy. This didn't seem to make any sense to Aloha, who tilted his head and looked puzzled. Okay then, what's this? He asked, picking up a similar looking box that was sitting next to the first one and giving it a shake. It made the same rattling sound. Those are Butterfingers. Butterfingers? No, not butter. Fingers. Butterfingers. That makes no sense. Sorry, they're chocolate treats. Chocolate? That's right. I had won the boxes of treats in a raffle at the grocery store a few days earlier, and they've been sitting there on the table ever since. I have to admit, though, that we did give pretty weird names to some of our snack foods. It was no wonder the devil was confused. Ain't no way, Estelle, don't roast the devil. I want to make you disappear next. Ah, yes, I've heard about how much humans love chocolate. Okay, well then, shall we do the chocolate? Huh? We're deciding what's going to disappear from the world, don't you remember? Isn't that kind of a random, impulsive choice? Well, what's your first goal at this? The chocolate disappears from the world. How would the world change? I tried to imagine what it might be like. Let's see. Chocolate addicts around the world would grieve, cry and scream, then their blood sugar levels would fall, and I suppose they would live out the rest of their life in a state of lethargy. Really is a boomer. Wonder, be careful. He's gonna make you disappear too. In a world without chocolate, would marshmallows and caramel just take its place? I wonder. Probably not. I don't think they would have the same appeal as chocolate. And besides, people would probably just get right to work on coming up with a new kind of sweet thing to replace the chocolate. It just goes to show how insatiable we humans can be when it comes to food. The cat sat next to me, munching on its Meow Mix. They're just name dropping these brands that I had poured for him that morning. As I watched him, I realized that for the most part we just call cat food. But humans, we're not satisfied with calling all our food human food. No, we're much fussier than that. We need names for all our different meals. Human beings put a lot of time and effort into what we eat. Finding the right flavors, preparing the ingredients, even forming the food into beautiful shapes. Chocolate is a prime example of this. Some chocolates are covered in nuts, while others are chocolate-coated wafers or shaped like little hearts. Chocolate seems to have really inspired humans to come up with all sorts of new ideas. Perhaps that's what drives all human progress, an insatiable desire for new things. It kinda made me feel like I've been lucky to have tasted chocolate at all. However, I would be crazy to stand up and proclaim, I would gladly give up my life up for chocolate. I don't think there's anybody in the entire world who's that stupid. If giving up chocolate can save my life, then why not? That's all it takes, and let's do it. There must be loads of similar things that I can easily give up to buy me more time. Just as I was beginning to feel like this deal might not be such a bad thing and started to see a speck of hope in my future, Aloha spoke. Does this stuff taste good? He asked, gazing at the box of chocolates. Not bad, I answered. Have you ever tried it? Never. Here, have one, I offered. No thanks. Human food doesn't agree with my stomach. It's just not my cup of tea. No, that's too bad. I was about to ask what his normal diet consists of, but then I thought perhaps that was something I didn't really want to know the answer to. Meanwhile, Aloha's curiosity seems to be getting the best of him. He grabbed a box of Chips Ahoy, took a whiff, then stared at the cookies. Slowly, cautiously, he brought the cookie to his lips, then scrunched his eyes shut and shoved it in his mouth. The room echoed with the sound of Aloha's muffled chewing. How's it? I asked. Aloha kept his eyes closed and stayed silent. Not good? Aloha let out a soft groan. Are you okay? Should I call an ambulance or something? Wow, that's delicious. Really? What did he put in these things? They're just too good. Are you sure you want to get rid of them? That would be such a waste. Wait a minute, this was your idea. Well, I stand corrected. I didn't realize that chocolate would be so tasty. If I don't get rid of something, I'll die. Isn't that what you said? Well, you could put it like that. Okay, then goodbye, chocolates. Really? Aloha asked again, sounding crestfallen. Yes, really, I replied with certainty, even though I was beginning to feel sorry for him, but my answer was final. Okay, but just one more. Aloha exclaimed, what? Chip Ahoy's ain't that good? Yeah, they're all right. They're whatever. Y'all have the chip ahoy cereal. That's kind of insane. I had it once and wow. Oh my gosh, eating that as a kid was insane. Ryuk with apples. Yeah. I just want one more, that's all. This will be the last one, I swear. Aloha's eyes began to swell up with tears. He looked so pathetic. He had really taken a shine to chocolate. Stealthily, when he thought I was distracted, he grabbed a few more cookies out of the box and stuffed them into his mouth, savoring the taste. When he was done chewing, he spoke again. Yeah. You know what? I just can't do it. What? It would be a crime to get rid of something so delicious. You can't be serious. How could he change his mind so easily? I mean, this was my life we were talking about here. I thought I'd come to terms with the fact that I was going to die soon. But now that I've been offered a way out, I found myself willing to try anything, no matter how ridiculous it seemed. Okay. Chips Ahoy, please. I'm kidding. I'd always thought that when my time came, I'd go quietly, peacefully, and with dignity. That's how I always imagined it would happen. But when death stares you in the face, you find yourself willing to accept a helping hand from anyone, even the devil, in order to stay alive. It's basic human instinct. Dignity and respectability fly out the window at that point. I'm not entirely okay with this, I protested. What's this now? Not having a crisis of conscience, are we? What do you mean? Of course I'm having a crisis. It's my life you're dealing with here. And you think you can decide whether I live or die based on what you happen to crave? Why not? I mean, I am the devil. This was too much for me to handle. I was speechless. Oh, come on, don't look so depressed. I'll think of something else. I'll come up with something right away. ASAP. Aloha's eyes quickly darted around the apartment. You could tell he was trying to make up for having changed his mind the first time around. Not that impressive for a devil, I thought, as I gave him an icy stare while I continued scanning the room. I prefer Chips Ahoy. Then all of a sudden, my mobile phone rang. Someone was calling from the post office where I work. I looked at the clock. It was well past the time I usually begin my shift. The voice on the other end of the line belonged to my boss, the postmaster, sounding slightly annoyed. He pointed out that I was late. However, just the day before when I left work early to go to the doctor. He'd actually seemed kind of worried about me. I'm going to be okay, boss, but I need some more time off to recover. Could I maybe have the rest of the week off? After he agreed to give me a week of sick leave, I hung up. That's it, exclaimed the devil. What? That, right there. Aloha stabbed his finger in the direction of my phone. Now that looks like something you don't need. You mean my phone? Yes, let's get rid of it, he cried ecstatically. What do you think? One day of life in exchange for your phone. If phones disappeared from the world, what would I gain and what would I lose, I wondered. Just as my thoughts began to race, Aloha leaned in towards me, uncomfortably close, and asked, So, what are you going to do? I weighed the pros and cons, one day of life or the phone. I wondered. Use it or lose it, Aloha warned. Just give me a minute. Okay, I'll give you 20 seconds, he paused. Now, 10 seconds, 9, 8, 7... Okay, can you cut it out with the mission control thing? Whatever, fine, just go ahead and make it disappear. Get rid of it. I wasn't entirely sure that I was making the right decision, but it wasn't like I was in a position to be dithering about it. My life or my phone? Obviously, I'll choose life. Okay, here we go. The devil sounded like he was having a blast as usual. In that moment, I suddenly remembered that I had never got around to calling my father. I haven't seen or contacted him since Mom died 4 years ago. I had heard that he was still running his little clock repair shop in the old neighborhood not far from where I live now. But I never thought of visiting, not even once. I'll admit, it felt kind of odd not bothering to drop your own father a line, especially when your time on Earth is limited. I didn't know if Aloha sensed my hesitation just then, but he suddenly shot me that big grin of his and said, There, I understand. Don't worry, you're not the only one when it comes to actually erasing things from your life. It actually makes you start to think. That's why I always include a special offer. What? kind of offer. Just before we seal the deal, you have the right to use a thing you're about to erase one last time. Oh, I see. So you're allowed to make one last phone call. You can call anyone you want. Aloha's offer only made me feel more confused. One last call to anyone I want? Of course, the first person who sprang to my mind was my dad. But I couldn't help remembering what had happened between us 4 years ago. And now that so much time had passed, who did I even have to talk about? I just couldn't bring myself to do it. So, who would it be instead? I wondered. Who gets my last phone call? Maybe someone I'd known my entire life, a close friend like Kay? He was definitely a great guy, and if only we could find the time to hang out again after all these years, I'm sure we would still get along great. On the other hand, we never really had any deep, meaningful, or serious conversations. How would Kay react if I called him out of the blue to tell him that I was dying, and that my phone was about to disappear? Which is why I thought I'd give him a ring just now. He'd think I lost my mind. He'd assume it was some sort of joke, and my final phone call would be wasted. That didn't seem like the best way to use your last phone call, ever. Back to the drawing board. I thought of a close friend at work, W. Why is it always an W? He was always easygoing and helped me out anytime. I could use an extra hand. He was a bit older and wiser than me, always willing to give me some advice, whether it was work related or general life advice. He was like my work big brother. But I don't know. It being the middle of the workday and all. I didn't really want to bother him. Just the fact that I was worrying about bothering W with no warning gave me the feeling that maybe I should be using my last phone call on Earth to get in touch with a different kind of acquaintance in my life. Hey, Livia. In fact, when I really think about it, W and I never really talked about anything important either. Sure, when I was drunk and having a good time out with the guys I worked with, which happened often since I'm a cheap date and can get drunk on just one beer, I might have thought we were really confiding in each other. But when you really get down to it, we weren't. We might have thought that we were talking about stuff that really mattered, but I can't really think of an example of any meaningful heart-to-hearts we had. I pulled up my list of contacts on my phone and scrolled through them as fast as I could to rack my brain. Names of friends and acquaintances flashed before my eyes one after the other. Each name seemed to carry a hidden meaning. Countless people with whom I seemed to have had some kind of a relationship, that when push comes to shove, I didn't actually share much of a connection with them after all. Here I was standing at death's door, and I couldn't think of a single person I cared enough about to call. I've connected with many people over the course of my life, but their relationships were ultimately all superficial. It's really depressing. Too depressing. To realize something like that at the end of your life. I wasn't keen to talk to Aloha about how I was feeling, so instead I left the room to go sit alone on the stairs. My fingers clasped tightly around my phone. Then all of a sudden, a number began to surface in the back of my brain. It was her. Her number. A number that wasn't saved in my contacts list. It was as if it had been tattooed on my body all along. Slowly, I began to dial. Alright. I'm gonna take like a 5-minute break. Alright, so he found someone to call. He put on wait, I actually thought it was Burge arrived because it disappeared. It's a Burge just, oh gosh, never mind. I wonder they're sick. Alright. After a few minutes, I finished the call and re-entered the room. Okay, never mind, they time skipped the call. Where I found Aloha playing with the cat. Actually, it was more like they were roughhousing with each other. Aloha seemed to have completely forgotten about me, so I watched in silence for a while as the two of them rolled and tumbled around on the floor together. Minutes went by before Aloha was finally aware of my cold stare. "No, you're back," he said, sounding somewhat embarrassed, and pulled himself up on the floor. He turned to face me, making an effort to put on a serious face. "Are you done?" I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The Prince of Darkness likes to play with cats? There was no use in him trying to act all cool and pretend like I hadn't seen anything. Despite this, I didn't say anything, and stifled my laughter. I composed myself and answered him calmly. Yes, quite finished. Okay, let's get to work. Let's make that phone disappear. Aloha looked delighted and attempted to give me a wink. But it was a kind of a pathetic wink, since he didn't seem to be able to close one eye at a time. So I just squinted both eyes in my direction. Suddenly, the phone that had been in my hand just a minute ago was nowhere to be seen. Alright, done. See you tomorrow. When I looked back up, the devil was gone. And the cat let out a sad meow that echoed out the walls of my apartment. Off the walls of my apartment. I was going to see her again, the person I had called. Her. I thought later that evening, as I drifted off into a deep sleep. And that's how my 7-day odyssey began. Okay, never mind, there's a follow-up. Wonder, don't cry. Are phones that important? Everything you can do with a phone, you can do on your computer. On a laptop, just bring your laptop around. Unless you like call somebody, I mean, you can just Zoom call, Discord call. No, oh my gosh. Alright, so we're on page 30. I'm probably gonna read to around page 50, 55. And then we're probably gonna finish this book in 3 streams. So this stream and 2 more streams is what I'm thinking. But we'll see. Alright, Tuesday. A world without phones. My roommate is a cat. He goes by the name of Cabbage. Maybe you've forgotten all about this by now, so why don't I try and jog your memory? I was 5 years old when Mom found an abandoned kitten and brought it home with her. It was pouring that day. It was pouring that day, and a little guy that had been left in a cardboard box by the side of the road. She had found it on her way home from the supermarket. The poor thing was soaked. Printed on the side of the box were the words, Nagano lettuce. And so after my mother had brought the kitten home and dried it off with a towel, she announced, "Let's name him Lettuce." This was pretty unusual. Mom had never liked animals. It took her a while to get used to petting Lettuce, and at first, she was a bit clumsy with him. So in the early days, I helped her to take care of the cat, until she got more comfortable with him. But then, to make matters worse, Mom found out that she was allergic to cats. There was no end to her sneezing. For an entire month, in spite of her perpetually watery eyes and constant sniffling, she never once considered giving the cat away. "I can't let him go, he chose me," she said while wiping her flushed, puffy face. And then one day, about a month later, Mom's cat allergy suddenly disappeared. It was a miracle. Or maybe her body just got used to it. In any case, one day her allergies were gone, and all symptoms, the sneezes, the tears, and the runny nose, disappeared. There's no way she made a contract with the devil, right? I remembered it as if it were yesterday. Lettuce wouldn't leave her side for a minute, constantly snuggling up to her. In order to gain something, you have to lose something, she always said. People are always trying to get something for nothing, but that's just theft. If you gain something, it means that someone somewhere has lost something. Even happiness is built on someone else's misfortune. She often reminded me of this. In fact, she considered it one of the laws of the universe. Lettuce lived for 11 years, but one day he developed a tumor and lost a ton of weight. Toward the end of his life, he barely moved and finally passed away peacefully in his sleep. The next day, Mom wouldn't move. She was unusually bright and cheerful, and liked cooking and tying up around the house. But now suddenly, she was no longer in the mood to do anything. She just stayed at home and cried. So I took up the housekeeping at her place, and every night, I'd have to drag Mom out with us for dinner at a nearby restaurant. Over time, I think we tried every item on the menu. A month went by like that, and then one day, out of nowhere, Mom came home with another rescued kitten in her arms. This new kitten looked exactly like Lettuce. It was a round little blob, colored black and white with a sprinkling of gray, a beautiful cat. He looked so much like Lettuce that we decided to call him Cabbage. It's incredible, he really does look just like Lettuce, she said with a laugh as she watched Cabbage climb up into her lap. It was the first time Mom had smiled in a month. Seeing her laugh again after such a long time made me misty-eyed. This is one of the reasons Also, another reason why I'm so scared to get pets is once they just pass away because they live shorter lifespans than us, I'm gonna get depressed. Alright, so maybe I teared up a bit. I guess I was just worried that Mom might fade away or disappear off to some faraway place and never come back. Then, 4 years ago, she really did leave us. What a coincidence. I have the same thing that Lettuce had, said Mom, laughing faintly. Also, just like Lettuce, she had lost a lot of weight. In the end, one night she went to sleep and simply never woke up. She, too, died peacefully. Take care of Cabbage, she had asked me before she died. Fate, however, seemed to have a sense of humor. It looked like I might expire before Cabbage did, just like Mom. She'd be pretty unimpressed with me, I'm sure. I can just imagine her saying that she should have left Cabbage with someone else. The next thing I knew, it was morning. It had been a long time since I dreamed about my mother. Cabbage meowed nearby. I pulled him close to me and gave a little furball a squeeze, feeling his fluffy body pressed against mine, warmed my heart. I swear, this book is gonna make me get a cat. Can I wait to let us stay longer? Oh, I think you mean Cabbage. Lettuce is already gone. But, oh wait, no, unless you want them to be alive again, but I'm sorry, Olivia. This cancer sounds contagious. Oh, no. And that's when I remembered I had been given one extra day of life. I wondered how many of the previous days' events I had dreamed. Maybe it all really happened in real life. But on the other hand, it's entirely possible it could have been a dream. But then I noticed that my phone, which I normally would have left on the bedside table, was nowhere to be found. And a fever that I had been battling had gone, along with my headache. Maybe this meant that the deal I had struck with the devil was also real. Telephones had disappeared from the world. When you think about it, that's not such a terrible thing, especially when it comes to cell phones. Lately it seemed like I was messing around on my stupid phone all the time, from the moment I got up in the morning to just before bedtime. I didn't make any time for reading books or newspapers, and DVDs I borrowed just piled up in my room unwatched. On a train on the way to work, I would stare at my phone the whole way. Even when I watched TV, I checked it regularly. During my lunch break, I got a terrible urge to look at my phone, and even when I was with Cabbage, I ended up fiddling with it instead of playing with him. Being such a slave to the device made me hate myself. See, you wonder? Look at all these reasons. Oh, sorry, I hit the mic. Look at all these reasons why a phone is not so good after all. You don't need to give your soul to the phone. What the wonder is? Mobile phones have been around for only about 20 years, but in just that short amount of time, they managed to take complete control over us. In a span of 2 decades, something that we don't really need has come to dominate our lives and make us believe that we can't live without it. When human beings invented the mobile phone, they also invented the anxiety that comes with not having one on you. I wondered if we went through the same thing when mail correspondence was first invented. We certainly did when the internet first came about. Throughout history, we've given birth to new things, only to lose the old way of doing things. I was beginning to think that maybe God was on something when he struck his deal with the devil. Was on to something, not on something. Why are you choking on your milk? Sofu, don't be sad. In fact, delete your phones now. You know, little LARP. Everyone's phones, put them away. Phones are gone now. I'll be honest, if we LARPed, then this live stream wouldn't happen because I'm videoing this. I'm live streaming this on my phone, or the video at least. God forbid a girl. Whatever, dude. I need my phone to work. Well, say goodbye to your work. You must be wondering who I made my last call to. It's kind of personal, but alright, I'll tell you. He did fall in love. She is the first woman I ever loved. My first girlfriend. I hope that doesn't make you think I'm some sentimental moron. They say that when a man is close to death, he thinks of his first love. I guess that means that when it comes down to it, I'm just like everyone else, a common man. That morning, I took my time getting up out of bed. Basking in the morning sun. And then I finally made my way to the kitchen, where I listened to the radio while I cooked breakfast. That's every medical question I have. I brewed some coffee, fried an egg, dropped a slice of bread in the toaster, and cut a few slices of tomato. After assembling my meal, then polishing it off, I poured myself another cup of coffee and kicked back and read a book. Life without a phone. It was so good. It felt as if time had slowed down and space expanded. As midday approached, I shut my book and headed for the bathroom for a nice hot shower. Afterward, I got dressed. My outfit was neatly pressed and was made up of my usual black and white basics. Then I headed out to meet her. My first stop after leaving the apartment was the barber shop. I realized it's a little absurd to take the time to get a haircut when you're about to die. But I wanted to look good for my ex-girlfriend. Don't laugh. Estelle, please. Leave me alone. And the main character should leave me alone too. After getting a trim, I stopped by the opticians around the street to get a new pair of glasses. By the time I arrived at this tram stop, I was a new man. A tram was pulling up just as I arrived, so I ran and jumped onto one of the green carriages. It was a weekday, so it was packed. Normally, all of the passengers would be absorbed by their phones, but today was different. Instead, people were reading books, listening to music, or staring at the scenery passing by outside. Oh yeah, I forgot everyone else forgot their phones. Or not forgot, lost their phones. Listening to music or saying, okay. People seem to have no trouble finding something to fill up their free time. Their facial expressions even seemed more cheerful than usual. Why do people always look so serious when they're checking their phones? I felt calmer inside the tram with all those contraptions stressing us out. Observing the scene around me, I realized that not only had I gained an extra day of life for myself, it also seemed like I'd done the world a big favor. See, wonder everyone's so much happier. Had phones really disappeared from the world completely? I wondered. I looked out the window of the tram at a sign for a noodle shop that sat on the edge of the shopping district. The business's phone number was lit up on the sign, as always. And when I looked around the inside of the tram, I noticed that there were still advertisements for mobile phone carriers plastering the walls. However, no one was on their phone. What did all this mean? Fake news. I remember that something similar had occurred in an old comic book series I used to read as a kid about a robotic cat named Doraemon. Doraemon! Volume 4 is the book where one of Doraemon's secret gadgets, the Pebble Hat, is introduced. The story went like this. As usual, the main character, Nobi, is in trouble with his parents, so he goes to Doraemon for comfort and complains. They don't need to watch my every move all the time. Sometimes I just want to be left alone. Then, Doraemon pulls out a gadget out of his 4th dimension pocket, the Pebble Hat. Doraemon explains. When you wear this hat, you'll be like a pebble on the ground, unnoticed. In other words, Nobita would still exist, but no one would pay any attention to him. What the heck, Sofu? Nobita is thrilled and puts on the hat. For a while, he enjoys being left alone, but then he starts to get lonely. And when he tries to take off the hat, he can't. It's stuck on the head, so he starts to cry. It's his tears that make the hat fall off his head, and his mother and father start to pay attention to him again. And Nobita realizes that he's lucky to have people who really care about him. The end. Oh, that's kind of sweet. You really talk about Doraemon? Leave Doraemon alone, okay? Honestly, I don't remember anything from Doraemon. I did watch it as a kid, but I don't remember anything. But to get back to what I was saying, I wondered if the system Aloha had created work similarly to Doraemon's Pebble Hat. Perhaps phones hadn't actually disappeared from the world, but nobody noticed them anymore. People had fallen into a collective trance. Maybe the devil was pulling a Doraemon. As the months and years went by, would phones gradually cease to exist completely? Like pebbles on the roadside, would they start to go unnoticed until they, too, disappeared completely. Glug, glug, glug. I realized that the 107 people who met Aloha before me must have made something disappear, but the rest of us just haven't noticed. It's as if the things you use in your everyday life, like your favorite coffee cup or the new socks you just bought, went missing one day. I mean, same. And it's not until much later on that you notice that they're missing in the first place. And once you do realize it, however much you search for them, you're not able to find them. For all we know, there might be all sorts of things that have already disappeared without our having noticed it. Things that we'd assume would always be around. The green tram climbed one hill, then another, before arriving at the next town. The stop I got off had opened out onto the town square. I headed to the spot where we agreed to meet, the center of the square where there stood a clock tower. We used to meet here when we were in college. There was a roundabout that circled the clock tower and lots of restaurants, bookstores, and old shops that sold odds and ends nearby. I was 15 minutes early. Normally I would have pulled out my phone to pass the time, but instead I pulled my book out of my pocket and began to read as I waited for her to arrive. 15 minutes passed, but she still hadn't shown up. Then half an hour went by and she still wasn't there. Oh no. Without thinking, I reached my hand into my pocket in search of my phone. Damn, it wasn't there. Of course I had just made phones disappear from the world. Did I get the place wrong? Or were we supposed to meet at a different time? I started to despair. All of the information I needed was in the phone I'd been using when I made my deal with the devil. There was a good chance I had the time wrong. Damn, this can't be happening, I muttered. I was supposed to feel liberated from my phone, but it turned out that I needed it after all, and there was nothing I could do. Disposal. No. It's... Oh, I keep hitting the mic. No wonder. It's just a minor setback. So I just stood there shivering at the foot of the clock tower. Come to think of it, there was a time when I often found myself muttering the exact same words. This was back when I was going out with her in college. She was from a big city but came to a small town out in the sticks to go to college and major in philosophy. I remember the house where she lived alone, the electric fan, the small space heater, and all the books. She had piles of them everywhere. Back in those days, everyone had a cell phone. That's how we all got in touch with each other. Everyone except her. That is, she didn't even have a landline at her house. When she called me, it was always from a payphone. Whenever I saw the words unknown caller light up on the screen of my cell phone, I would be filled with joy. I'd always answer the call immediately, no matter where I was, even if I was in class or at work. The worst part though, was when I missed her call. All I could do was stare helplessly at the incoming call history. There was no way to call her back. I used to have nightmares about empty telephone booths, where the phone would ring forever and no one ever answered. After some time, I started sleeping with my phone, holding it tight against me so I wouldn't miss a call. The warmth the phone emitted would remind me of the warmth of her body, and I would fall into a deep sleep with the phone clutched against my chest. After we had been seeing each other for about 6 months, I finally managed to persuade her to get a landline installed at her house. So of course, she hooked up one of those vintage rotary phones in classic black. "I got it for free," she exclaimed, as she demonstrated me the dialing section, which made a series of loud clicking noises. I called that old rotary phone so many times that the number was seared into my brain. It was like it had become part of me. It's strange how that works. Out of all the numbers stored in my cell phone, I was never able to commit one to memory. I couldn't remember the numbers of close friends or colleagues or even my parents. I no longer bothered to memorize any numbers. I had left the work of memory and even my ties to other human beings to my mobile phone. It's pretty scary to think about what these devices have done to the human brain. Yesterday, as I sat on the stairs trying to think of a number that my memory had held on to tightly enough that it was ingrained in me, naturally the number that came to mind was hers. When it came down to making my last phone call ever, I was able to rely on my own memory. It had been 7 years since we broke up, but there was still something I needed to ask her. When she answered the phone, I couldn't believe she still had the same number. She told me that she was working at the movie theater in town and the next day just happened to be her day off. I thank God for his coincidence and made plans to meet her. Okay, see you tomorrow. Her voice hadn't changed at all since we were in college. I felt as if I'd gone back in time. I continued to wait for an hour below the clock tower until my feet got so cold that I thought they had frozen to the pavement. Then, all of a sudden, she appeared striding towards me. She hadn't changed one bit. The way she dressed, her walk, it was all the same. The only thing that was different was the shoulder-length haircut she had worn in school was now cut short. When she saw my face and how pale it was, her face changed into a worried look. "Oh, what's wrong?" she asked. "Are you okay?" I was kind of disappointed that this was the first thing she said to me instead of something like, "How you've been?" or "It's so good to see you," since so much time had passed since we last saw each other. I assured her I was fine, made some pleasantries and chatted a bit. I discovered that I had indeed gotten the time wrong and arrived an hour early for our meeting. Damn, this can't be happening, I cursed myself. Why? What's happened? Months later, in a cafe nearby, I told her, "I'm probably going to die soon." That's what he talks, that's what he says. "I'm probably going to die soon." She was silent for some time, occasionally taking a sip of her cocoa. Finally, she looked up at me and said, "Is that so?" Crazy. Her response took me by surprise. She sounded a little glib, to say the least. To be totally frank, I imagined only 3 possible responses from her once I told my diagnosis. In order of preference, the responses were these. 1. Why? What happened? 2. Is there anything I can do? Just say it, I'll do anything. 3. Remain silent for a moment and then burst into tears. Her reaction left something to be desired. Although I guess when I think about it, I had been extremely calm when the news was delivered to me. The whole situation seemed kind of surreal. Even to me, so why should I be surprised if other people didn't seem shocked, disappointed, or sad about it either? I wonder why people always expect from others things that they themselves can't or won't do. Did I really want her to be stricken with grief or shock? But why so sudden, she continued. It's advanced stage cancer. No, that's terrible. They don't seem accepting at all. I'll be completely devastated over me. Of course, I couldn't exactly tell her that the devil was helping me buy more time on Earth. I wouldn't want her to think that her first love had completely lost his mind while on the brink of death. And besides, that wasn't what I had come to speak to her about. So, I started. What? Since I might die soon, I felt the need to find out more about myself, to reach some kind of understanding about myself and my life. Is that so? I mean, I guess I need to know if my life had any meaning. I guess one would wonder about that at the end of their life. So that's why I wanted to talk about us. I mean, our history. I remember all sorts of things about us, but I wanted to ask you what you remember. Anything, even the little things. I realized I've been talking very fast. I paused and looked down at my coffee, which had gone cold, so I downed the rest of it in one go. She didn't look pleased at my request. Well, if that was the case, you should have given me some advance warning, she said, then paused, deep in thought. I suddenly felt extremely awkward, so I excused myself quickly to the bathroom, then took my time returning to my seat. When I finally sat down, she said, "Now that's something I do remember." "What?" "You always went to the bathroom a lot." This was her first offering. "You always took a really long time." "For a guy," she said. So that was it? This is what she remembered about me? She'd never mentioned this bathroom thing to me before. Although now that I think about it, I do go pretty often and take quite a long time. That's because my mind tends to wander while I'm in the bathroom, to the point where I sort of drift off. Then I take a long time washing my hands afterward, and walking back from the bathroom and so on, but on the flip side, it seemed like she hardly ever went to the bathroom. And whenever we were out somewhere and used the bathroom at the same time, she would always be out first and waiting for me. Whatever. "Oh, and you always sighed a lot," she continued. "It always made me think that life must be awful for you." "Was I really like that?" I asked. "And you weren't much of a drinker. You couldn't take your liquor." "Geez, sorry." "Oh yeah, and also, whenever we went to a restaurant, you could never decide what to order. So you'd always end up ordering the same thing every time, curry rice. And whenever I got angry at you, you'd sulk and take a really long time to get over it. After blurting out all this out, she looked pretty satisfied with herself and went back to casually sipping her coca. Wow, I thought. So this is what I have to listen to during what could be my final days on Earth. Did my life even have any meaning? Honestly, this seemed really cute that she remembered this after 7 years. Was it worth the effort? Is this all you remember about the man you once loved? I wondered. This was pretty difficult to listen to. On second thought, however, maybe it's not so strange. Women tend to be unforgiving and unsentimental when it comes to their exes. That must be it, I told myself. Copium. Oh, and one more thing. Whenever you called, you would talk a lot. But then when we meet up in person like this, you didn't have much to say. I had to admit, she was spot on there. In those days, we'd talk on the phone for 2 or 3 hours at a time, despite the fact that we only lived a 30-minute walk from each other. Once in a blue moon, we'd talk on the phone for 8 hours straight and then laugh about the fact that if we were going to talk on the phone for that long, then we should have just spent the day together. But when we actually spent time with each other, there wasn't much to talk about. On the phone, it somehow seemed more intimate, even though we weren't with each other in person. We would have the most involved conversations over the most inconsequential things. Even though this last observation was true, her judgment of me seemed a bit harsh. Was this a tough critique for someone who's not long for this earth? Even though my heart was breaking, I continued the conversation. But you stuck around for more than 3 years putting up with all of that. That's for sure, but what? I liked talking to you on the phone. You used to get so excited about music and novels. It was as if the world had suddenly transformed. I liked you best when you talked so passionately. I might have even loved you, even though you were somehow incapable of coming up with something to talk about when we meet in person. I might have even loved you? What does that mean? Yeah, you're right about the phone calls. I agree. It was the same way for me. I remember when you talk about movies, your voice would change and everything felt different for some reason. The admission seemed to break the ice, and from that point on the conversation, the conversation flowed more easily between us. Mostly we talked about old times and people we knew back then, like the skinny kid who grew up to become incredibly fat, or the plain Jane who back then had come off as cold and stern but then got married right out of college and now had 4 children. Next thing we knew, it was dark outside, so I offered to walk her home. She told me that she lived in a little room above the movie theater where she worked. So you finally did, I joked. You might say you want to spend the rest of your life at the movies. Now, don't tease me, she laughed, then changed the subject as we strolled along the cobble street. So how's your father? I wouldn't know. Still haven't made up? I haven't seen him since my mother died. You know, your mother always said that she wanted the two of you to get along. I guess we just weren't able to live up to her expectations, I responded. I remember that after we had been seeing each other for about 6 months, I took her home to meet my parents. My father didn't even bother to come out of his shop to say hello. My mom really took to her. Mom served cake and cooked a meal, and then served more cake after that. She wouldn't let her go home. I always wanted a daughter, my mother confessed to her. Mom only had brothers and no sisters. Even the cats, lettuce and cabbage, were male. After that day, they would go out together, just the 2 of them without my knowing. She was a really wonderful woman, she told me, smiling. How so? Sometimes she called me if a new restaurant opened. She'd get all excited and invite me to go out with her. She taught me how to cook. We even get our nails done together. Really? I never knew. 3 years after we broke up, Mom passed away. But despite this, my ex-girlfriend still came to my funeral. I'm sorry. I misread that. But despite this, my ex-girlfriend still came to the funeral. And it was in tears the entire time. Don't worry about it, Wonder. She held Cabbage in her arms during the entire service until it was all over. I think she'd seen how confused and distraught Cabbage was, as he paced back and forth, seemingly lost. Oh, don't do that. Not the cat. Even after we broke up, Mom would always say to me, "No, she was a good catch, that one." making sure to slip it in almost every time I saw her. When I saw the way my ex-girlfriend had taken such good care of Cabbage at the funeral, I think I finally understood what Mom had meant. "How's Cabbage?" she asked, as if reading my thoughts. "He's doing fine." "What are you doing about him? Will you take care of him when you die?" "I'm still thinking about it. I'll find someone." "Well, let me know if you don't." "Thanks." As we made our way down a steep hill, I could see the movie theater sign all lit up. Wait, hold on, I'm adjusting my feet. I could see the movie theater sign all lit up at the bottom. Years had gone by since I last set foot in the place, and it now seemed smaller than I remembered. The first time I had ever seen the theater, I was a student, and it had looked so big and colorful back then. I felt the same way about the clock tower in the square. For the most part, the neighborhood remained unchanged. The real estate office, restaurants, the prep school, and the flower shop were all still there. The only big difference was that the supermarket had been renovated, but for some reason, the town now felt like a miniature model of the city I used to know. Had it really shrunk in size, or was I just seeing things in a different light? "You know, there's something I wanted to ask you," I said. "What?" Why do you think we broke up?" "What makes you think you want to know all of a sudden?" "Wait, what makes you want to know all of a sudden?" "There must have been some specific reason, but I can't seem to remember it now." There's no way he remembers. He doesn't remember. Actually, this is what I have been planning to ask her about. All along. Did we grow bored? Or did our feelings fade over time? I couldn't for the life of me remember what it was exactly that finally drove us apart. "Do you remember?" I asked. She didn't respond for some time, but then she suddenly looked up at me and proceeded to fire off a series of questions. "What's my favorite? Oh no. I don't like the sound of this. Oh no. What's my favorite food?" What a random question. I thought as the seconds ticked by. Let me think. Is it shrimp tempura? Wrong, it's chicken fingers. Oh, I was close, I thought. They're both fried foods. But wait a minute, what was she getting out of this line of questioning? And what's my favorite animal? What? Let's see now, I hesitated. A cappuccino monkey. Right. My favorite drink? Damn, what was it? Nothing came to mind. Sorry, I give up. I finally said, "Coca. I was just drinking some back there at the cafe. Have you forgotten already?" Right, now I remembered. She loved chicken fingers and would always order it when we went to the diner. She used to always say that it was her favorite food in the whole wide world. And when we went to the zoo, she never strayed from the monkey cages. And she did drink hot cocoa all the time, even in summer. It's not as if I'd forgotten completely. I just couldn't remember it at that precise moment. I suppose after we broke up, my heart had shed away these memories of her. I'd heard somewhere that people forget things in order to build new memories. You had to forget some things in order to move on in life. But I was beginning to question this theory. I realized, now that I was staring death in the face, I found myself remembering lots of trivial things I'd nearly forgotten about. I guess people forget. It's more or less what I expected. It's the same with us breaking up. It's just one of those things. It's not worth trying to remember all the details. Was that it? Really? Well, if you really want to know, I'd say that the trip we took before graduation was the beginning of the end. Shoot, I don't know how to say this word. I know it's a place, but... You mean Buenos Aires? Oh gosh. Yo. Well, whatever that place is. Wow, that really takes me back. Since we were college students. What? I don't know how to pronounce this word. You know what? I'm gonna Google real quick. And I lost my place in the book. Don't worry about it. $51? Oh, thanks. Yeah, I assume it was around 50. It was like they kind of like... It's Iris. Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires. Damn, I thought it would be Aries or Aries. Right. Argentina mentioned. Whatever, Sofu. That's weird, but okay. Dang, Sofu. Argentina, weird. Buenos Aires, weird. I'm kidding. You mean Buenos Aires? Wow, that really takes me back. Since we were college students when we were together, all of our dates took place in the confines of our tiny town. We never went farther afield. We just did laps around town as if we were playing an endless game of Monopoly, and yet we were never bored. We'd meet at the library after class and go to a movie. Then we'd go to our usual cafe and talk. After that, we'd go back to our place and make love. Okay, that was just out of nowhere. I know you're okay, whatever, Soulful. Every once in a while, she'd pack lunch for us and we'd take the tram to the spot with the best view in town and have a picnic. It wasn't anything too fancy or adventurous, but we were happy. It was all we needed. Thinking about it now, it's kind of hard to believe, but I suppose the size of the town was just right for us back then. Over the 3 years we were together, we only went abroad once, to Buenos Aires, Argentina. It was both our first and last trip together. At the time, we were both crazy about a movie by a Hong Kong director that was set in Buenos Aires. So for our last long break as students, we decided to go there. We booked a flight on a cheap American airline that had a long layover partway through the trip. I remember the airplane was freezing and the food was awful. After 26 hours of travel, we finally arrived in Buenos Aires. From Ezeiza International Airport, we took a seedy cab to El Centro, where we checked into the hotel and headed straight into our room, to bed. But then we found we couldn't sleep. It didn't matter that we were exhausted. We were on the other side of the world, as well as in a different hemisphere, so our internal clocks were still on Japan time. Since we couldn't fall asleep, we decided instead to go and explore the city. The beautiful sound of someone playing the bandoneon echoed outside, and people tangled on the cobblestone street. The sky hung low in Buenos Aires as we took in the sights. We headed for the famous old Recoleta Cemetery and wandered around its labyrinth passages, eventually finding the grave of Eva Perón. Then later, we ate lunch in a cafe while an elderly white-haired guitarist strummed tango music for the crowd. So Sofu hearing me butcher all these names, they're about to slap the heck out of me. In the afternoon, we boarded a bus for La Boca, an old working-class district known for its colorful houses, street musicians, and other attractions. The bus wound its way through a series of narrow streets, and after a half hour of this, the colors of the neighborhood finally came into view. The wooden houses were painted sky blue, mustard yellow, emerald green, and salmon pink. As we strolled around, we admired the colorful houses as they glowed in the setting sun. Then, we headed towards San Telmo to end the night by watching people tango at a club called La Ventana. The feverish music and passionate dancing we saw there transported us to another realm. Hey Sean, I'm not expecting us. If Paul, you're Okay, so what's wrong with this trip? We spent the next couple of days strolling through the city, slightly drunk on a spirit that hung in the air. Then one day we met Tom, who was staying at the same cheap hotel as us. There's no way, is it Tom? While he went by the name Tom, he was actually Japanese. He was a young man of 29 and had quit his job at a media company to travel around the world. Read to find out, I'm scared. In the evenings, we joined him on his trip on a local supermarket to buy wine, meat, and cheese. Then we'd head back to the hotel together and eat in a communal dining room. Night after night, we stayed up late talking, eating and sipping our wine. Tom would share stories about his travels around the world, telling us about the sacred cows in India, the Buddhist monks of Tibet, who were just young boys, the blue mosque in Istanbul, the white knights of Helsinki, and now in Lisbon. You could see the ocean stretch on into eternity. Tom would indulge on the Argentine wine and quickly get himself stinking drunk, but would still go on talking. There are so many cruel things in the world, he once told us. There are also just as many beautiful things. For us, after living in a small town doing the same thing day after day, everything all felt so new and fascinating. We couldn't imagine some of the things he described, but despite... Dang, Iggy, you awake? Iggy, go back to sleep. Oh shoot, what was the last thing? But despite the difference in our experiences, Tom had no trouble relating to us. He listened to our stories, sometimes laughing, sometimes with tears in his eyes. There we were, the three of us on the other side of the world from our home, filling our nights with endless conversation. Then, when it was almost time for us to return to Japan, Tom suddenly disappeared. He hadn't turned up at the hotel after heading out for a day of sightseeing. That night, we sipped our wine and waited for him in our usual spot, but he never showed. The next day, we found out that Tom was dead. He had taken a trip to the border between Argentina and Chile to see the historic statue of Christ, when a bus he was on fell off a cliff. I'm sorry, I should not be laughing, but that's just so sudden. The bus just fell off a cliff. That is so tragic. It was like a dream. It didn't seem real. I could still see Tom joining us in the dining room, bottle of wine in hand, saying, "Come on, time for a drink." But now, Tom wasn't coming back. We spent the rest of the trip in shock. On our last day in Buenos Aires, we visited Iguazu Falls, which is 30 minutes from the airport. After 2 hours of hiking, we reached a narrow crack in the Earth's surface that goes by the name of the Devil's Throat. We'd seen this place in the Hong Kong film that we were obsessed with at the time. Devil's Throat sits at the top of the largest waterfall in the world. Water rushed over the edge with an unimaginable force. The magnificence and scale of that place gave me a sense of sheer violence nature is capable of. Then I noticed that my girlfriend was crying next to me, but I couldn't hear her. No matter how loudly she sobbed, her voice was drowned out by the deafening sound of the fall. It was then that it hit me, the undeniable, tangible feeling that someone I knew had died, that I lost someone I had grown close to. Tom was dead, and we would never see him again. No more talking late into the night, drinking red wine, or enjoying music together. It was the first time the finality of death had really hit home for either of us, and so she started to cry there in that place. A place where there was no denying just how powerless and utterly helpless we human beings are. I didn't know what to say. There was nothing I could do to console her. All I could do was stare blankly at the white, foamy water as it cascaded down the falls and was swallowed up by a great hole in the earth. We left Buenos Aires and returned to Japan via the same exact route we took to get there. Again, it took ages. For the entire 26-hour journey, we never spoke one word to each other. Had we talked too much while we were in Buenos Aires? I wondered. No, that's not what it was. I think there was simply nothing left to say to each other. We didn't talk because we just couldn't. We sat next to each other and couldn't find the words to describe what we were thinking or feeling. We were both in pain over losing Tom, and were at a complete loss for words. As we sat there in silence for 26 hours, I think we both knew that this was the end of us. Why? Our relationship was over. How strange it was that we both felt like we were meant to be together, and yet both of us could see that the end was clearly coming. Hold up. The long hours of silence stretched out ahead of us on our plane ride, so I started to flip through the pages of my travel guide. There was photographs of a massive mountain range, Mount Aconcagua, the highest peak in South America, which is located on the border between Argentina and Chile. I turned the page, and there was a figure of Christ, the Redeemer, on top of a mountain in the Andes, towering over the surrounding area. I wondered whether Tom had actually made it there, or if he died before getting a chance to see it. I imagined him getting off the bus and gazing down at the beautiful land spread out below the mountaintop. As he turns around, he noticed the huge shadow of the cross, and he looks up to see the figure of Christ, arms open in a welcoming gesture. The sun hangs behind the statue at shoulder height, silhouetting it brightly against the clear sky, and Tom squints as he stares up at this spectacle of light. I began to tear up. My thoughts were too much for me to handle, so I turned to look out the window of the plane. Outside, I could see the ocean filled with icebergs stretching on and on into the distance. The setting sun gave the endless sea of ice a purple hue. It was so beautiful, it was almost cruel. 26 hours later, we were back in our little Monopoly town. Okay, see you tomorrow, she called over her shoulder as she got off at her station and headed down the steep hill. I watched as her figure with perfect posture retreated into the distance. A week later, we broke up. One short 5-minute phone call and it was over, just like that. It was like filling out a change of address form at a local post office. A short, business-like conversation and it was all done. Over time, we had clocked in more than 1,000 hours in telephone conversation, and now all it took was 5 minutes to end the relationship. I'll be honest, I don't get it. Maybe I do get it, but not that much. Hold up. Oh my gosh. Okay, 8 more pages. What time is it? Okay, I'm reading all the 8 pages. I'm reading 8 more pages and we'll end at 65. So it ends on a chapter. Dang, I was gonna end that after 2 hours, but I'm actually not that tired. I mean, I probably will be really tired once I stop reading. Right now, I'm kind of interested in what's happening. Alright. While the telephone had made it easy for us to get in touch with each other quickly, in retrospect, it also meant that we missed out on the chance to get to know each other in a more profound way and to become truly close. Me too. The phone did away with the time that was needed to develop real memories and feelings for each other, and it wasn't long before the feelings that we did have for each other evaporated. This reminds me of what we talked about earlier. How that just talking to each other online on an online space is like different from like meeting people IRL or in real life. My phone bill, which arrived without fail on the first of the month, would list a total of 20 hours worth of calls with a charge of $150. I don't think we had ever discussed whether the cost of all that talking on the phone was actually worth it. It made me wonder how much I was paying per word. We could talk as much as we wanted over the phone, but that didn't guarantee that we develop a deep connection to each other. Yeah. I feel like that's the same goes for... Oh, you know, I'll talk about it later. I need to finish the book. I need to finish the chapter. This is probably why, when we finally stepped out of the Monopoly game we'd been playing around our little college town and into the real world, we found out that the old rules, the things that made our relationship possible in that particular time and place, no longer applied. In actuality, I think the romance between us had been over for quite a while, but for some reason we carried on playing anyways, following all the rules, but then all it took was a few dates in Buenos Aires, I keep saying Aries, Iris, to make it obvious that those rules were meaningless. But there was one thing that still bothers me to this day. I often wonder whether if we just had our phones with us on the flight back to Japan, maybe, just maybe, we could have talked about our feelings and wouldn't have broken up. Maybe the Monopoly game was over, but perhaps we could have tried our hand at a new game. I fantasized about God appearing to us on the plane and bringing us 2 phones so I could call her even though she was sitting right next to me. What are you thinking about? You first. I'm sad. Me too. I was thinking about you. I was thinking about you too. So what are we going to do now? What are we going to do? I don't know. What should we do? I just want to go home. Yeah, me too. But what about after that? What's next? I have no idea. Why don't we move in together? Might be a good idea. We can have coffee at home. And hot cocoa. If only we'd had telephones with us then. We could have talked during our flight back. We didn't even have to talk about anything special. Just talking would have been enough to show that we were there for each other and that we cared. It would have been nice to have taken the time to listen to what was going on in the other one's head. To understand each other's feelings, if only. When we parted ways at the station near the house, she gave me a faint smile as we said our goodbyes. I still remember that smile. It was embedded in my memory and planted somewhere deep in my heart. It was like an old football injury that ached on rainy days. But I guess that's not that unusual. I must have a whole collection of small injuries, tucked away somewhere in the recesses of my memory. I suppose those are just what some people call regrets. Oh, my voice! So about today, the sound of her voice brought me back from my reverie and I realized that we'd arrived at the movie theater where she lived. Yes? I'm sorry if I said anything that hurt your feelings. Oh, no big deal. It was interesting. Well, I guess I held up my end of the bargain. What bargain? As usual, I've forgotten what she was talking about. Don't you remember? We promised that if we ever broke up, that we'd tell each other what we didn't like about the other. That's right. We had made that deal. We thought it would be a good way to learn about ourselves, about love and being in a relationship. Love is an internal teacher, I'd said back then without a hint of irony. And each time I uttered those words, she would respond by telling me that she couldn't imagine ever breaking up with me. And I felt the same exact way at the time. Oh, that's rough. That's why I told you everything I didn't like about you today. Now you know everything that's wrong with you before you die, she said in playful tone, letting out a little laugh. She was clearly enjoying poking fun at me. Well, thanks for keeping your promise, even though it's not exactly what I wanted to hear as I teeter on the brink of death, I responded, laughing along with her. When we had started dating, I just couldn't imagine our relationship ever ending. I assumed that because I was happy, she must be happy too. But then a time came when that was no longer the case. Feelings can't always be mutual. Love tends to fizzle out over time, and even though everyone knows that, it doesn't stop anyone from falling in love. I guess it's the same with life. We all know that it has to end someday, but even so, we act as if we're going to live forever. Like love, life is beautiful because it must come to an end. You're going to die pretty soon, right? She asked, pushing open the large heavy doors to the theater. You make it sound like it's no big deal. Well, I was just thinking that I could do at least a screening of your favorite film for you here one last time, if you like. Really? I love that. Thanks. Okay. How about you meet me back here at 9 tomorrow night? It will be an after-hours showing. Bring a film that you love. Will do. Oh, and before you go, I do have one last question for you. What was it this time? What's my favorite place in the entire world? Oh man, what was it? I've forgotten everything. I can tell by the look on your face that you don't remember. In which case, we'll make that your homework assignment. Come back with the answer tomorrow night. And with that, she closed the large theater doors behind her. See you tomorrow, she mouthed through the glass. Until then, I shouted back. The theater light turned off, and the street went dark around me. I stared at the old brick movie theater for a while, under the darkened neon lights of the marquee, thinking about what a strange day it had been. Phones had disappeared from the world, but what had I really lost, I wondered, and entrusted that device with my memory and my relationships. And when I suddenly disappeared, I was filled with overwhelming anxiety. But I guess, more than anything, the loss of my phone was incredibly inconvenient. I never felt as lonely and helpless as I did as when I was waiting underneath that clock tower. With the invention of mobile phones, the idea of not being able to find the person you're supposed to be meeting disappeared. People forgot what it meant to be kept waiting. That feeling of unbearable impatience at not being able to get a hold of her, mixed with the warm feeling of hope and a shivering cold, and was still fresh in my mind. Then, all of a sudden, it came to me. Of course, that's it, I thought. Her favorite place. This is her favorite place. Right here, the movie theater. How many times has she told me that she felt as if there was always be an empty seat waiting for her at this theater? As if her being there somehow made the place complete. I figured it out. I wanted to tell her right away, so I unconsciously sank my hand into my pocket to grab my phone. But of course, damn, it wasn't there. I'd forgotten again. There were no more phones. How frustrating. I really wanted to let her know right away, but there was nothing else I could do. So instead, I made my way slowly down the street toward home. I turned back to look at the theater once more and recalled what it felt like when we were students, and I'd wait at home for her to call. I felt the exact same way back then as I did now. I wanted to let her know that I figured out her favorite place, but I couldn't. It seemed like the times when I wasn't able to get a hold of her was when she were on my mind the most. This reminds me of how, like, I think I never thought of it this way, but the main character, like, probably just talks about everything on the phone so that there's nothing left to talk about in person. For example, like figuring out the answer to the question already. Instead, he can save it for tomorrow, so it becomes a topic to talk about tomorrow instead of just already having talked about that topic on text. This makes me think about how sometimes I would say, or a friend would say, I have this story that I want to tell you about my trip, or about my trip to here. Can't wait to tell you in person. They specifically say that. I do the same thing. I can't wait to tell you in person. Okay, why can't you just tell me on text right now? Because it's not as meaningful, huh? Can someone enjoy a moment together when in person? Yes, they can. I still think they can. But there's still like those. It just reminds me of like sometimes it's more meaningful to talk about in person as well for some people. And in person hits different. Granted, I don't think there's like a right or wrong way. It just depends on the people. It does remind me of like my friends are like, hey, let me tell you in person. Can't wait to tell you in person or something like that. And just some people prefer one over the other. And probably the girl, which you never got a name for. Did we even get the main character's name? They think differently from one another. Or maybe now he's talking a lot more in person because there's no phones anymore. Hey Brooke, yep, reading stream, but we're gonna end soon. Maybe. But I agree with that for me though, broke, Lisa. It's just so much easier to react or give like genuine reactions and comment on their story as it goes on in person versus over text. Or phone call. Alright. Where was I? In the old days before mobile phones and emails, people would write letters to each other. They would imagine the letters reaching their loved ones and wonder what their reaction would be once they received it. Then they would eagerly wait for another letter in response, checking the mailbox each day. The process reminded me a bit of gift giving. It's not so much the object you're giving the gift that you're excited about, but the look on the recipient's face and how happy they'll be once they open it. And in order to gain something, you have to lose something. That's what Mom always said. I remember she said it in the same day she was cured of her allergies. She was stroking Lettuce, who was curled up on her lap, and she had said it with such conviction. I thought about my ex-girlfriend as I looked up at the Markley sign, and I began to feel her words weighing down on me. They're going to die pretty soon, right? The words echoed in my head, and I felt a sudden sharp pain on the right side of my head. My chest was tight, and I couldn't breathe, and shivers ran through my entire body. I felt so cold that my teeth started chattering. Marquis is pronounced as Marky? There's no way. It's pronounced Marky, it's Jover for me. Because I've always pronounced it Marquis, because that's how freaking professors pronounced it back then when talking about the Marquis tool on like Photoshop and Illustrator. I mean, we can Google it real quick, though. We can see. And we're on page 63, I remember. Yep, thank you, Lisa. Marquis. Okay, hold up. My British, save me. The British people, save me. Okay, it's even worse. It's Marquis. It's Soldier over. You want Wonder? You're never allowed here again. You know, I'm erasing you next. I'm kidding. Thank you, Wonder. Nice, you know. At the cost of my pride. I'm kidding. I really am going to die after all, I thought. But I don't want to, was my next thought. My legs began to buckle and I fell to my knees in front of the theater. I heard a voice behind me cry out, I don't want to die. It was my voice. I spun around in surprise and saw Aloha. Got ya, didn't I? Man, you should have seen the look on your face. There stood Aloha in sub-zero temperatures wearing his trademark Hawaiian shirt and shorts. Sunglasses perched on top of his head. Where before there had been palm trees and vintage cars, his shirts now sported dolphins and surfboards. What a maniac. Try putting on some real clothes, will you? I thought. But despite being pissed off, I couldn't work up the energy to get really angry. Dude, you got a date. I'm totally jealous. I've been watching you from the sidelines all day. It looks like you were having a great time. Wait, you've been watching us this whole time? But where were you? I asked, bringing out in cold sweat. Up there. Aloha pointed up at the sky. I couldn't handle the sky anymore. But back to business. You don't want to die yet, do you? I can tell that you still want to hang on to your life. I guess. Oh, come on. There's no doubt about it. You don't want to die. You're just like everyone else. I was a little embarrassed to admit it. But Aloha was right. I didn't want to die. Or to be more precise, it's not that I didn't want to die. It's just that I couldn't stand the fear of facing death head on. It's just that I couldn't stand the... It's just that I couldn't stand the fear of facing death head on, of approaching the end of the line. Well, anyway, it's time for our next disappearing act, Aloha continued. I've already picked out what you're giving up next. What? This! Aloha announced while pointing at the movie theater. So how about it? We get rid of movies in exchange for an extra day of life. Movies? I said under my breath, gazing at the marquee as my vision blurred and I thought of all the times I went to this movie theater with my ex-girlfriend and all the films we had seen together. A montage of different scenes floated before my eyes. A crown, a horse, clowns, a spaceship, a silk hat, a machine gun, the silhouettes of a naked woman. Anything is possible when it comes to movies. Clowns laugh, spaceships dance, and horses talk. I must be having a nightmare, I thought as the images swirled around me. Help! I called out, but could barely hear my own voice. That's when my vision went black and I passed right in front of the theater.